Hello everybody, welcome. This is the TV Hub Official 1 here with another video, and this time we are going to do a TV show review because I thought that this would be a fun thing to do, and it's good because I, like what I'm doing. So, this time we're going to do Red Dwarf, and it was a good series. I watched it and enjoyed it, so I decided why not to do a review of it, and then just to share my opinions with you guys, and you can comment below what you think about it, but we'll get to that after we finish this video. So we're going to start review off here with Series 1, Episode 1, where it all begins in this pilot episode. As you can see, it is written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and they had a little bit of trouble getting this to the screen, actually. So they had to go through a long process of getting this screen, so it is actually quite a miracle that it's made it. And to think that these people made one of the most famous shows of sci-fi shows of all time. It is great and successful, and went on to produce 10 series. And basically, I am going to try and run through every single episode of the show. So basically, in doing this, we're going to talk about all the key moments, the storyline, and what I'm going to give this episode, in my opinion. What kind of ratings I'll give it. But we'll get on to that in a second. So we're going to start off by giving you a little bit of a synopsis. So my synopsis here starts off with the fact that there are 10 series, which you know. So there are 61 episodes in total. And yeah, so to give this show a review would be a very good idea, in my opinion, to let people know about this if you haven't already. And yes, so there was first 6 seasons were created by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor until season 7, and season 8 were just written by Naylor with collaborations from other writers. And then we have gone over to the air date, which was the 15th February 1988 for this very first episode. But to give you a just synopsis in total, the series follows the fortunes of Dave Lister, who is stranded 3 million years in the future, together with the hologrammatic representation of the former bunkmate and immediate superior Arden Rimmer, a creature known only as Cat, and the ship's computer collie. During Series 2, I'll get onto that in a minute, but that's Series 2. So basically the synopsis follows that these two guys who work in JMC, Juniper Mining Corporation, on a ship, very sort of low ranking members of the crew who work here in, their existence. Rimmer trying to better himself, Lister with his own plan in mind of how he wants to live the next 5 years. So we start off by showing around a lot of basically just a lot of the events that unfold on the ship. So it starts off quite average until we meet we get to the bit showing the pictures of the fact that one of their crewmates has passed away, and at their funeral is going to be resurrected, who is resurrected as a hologram. So this is one of the sci-fi elements that's brought into the show, and I think that this is very interesting indeed, how he's just brought back, and it's not actually him, but it is a hologrammatic version of him. As I said, hologrammatic Rimmer, which is what's going to happen later on when he will be brought back 3 million years later. So we get into Red Dwarf Series 1, which was co-written in 1983 and was given to Paul Jackson, who had trouble convincing the BBC to take on the series. 3 years after the initial rejection, the script was accepted by BBC Northwest. The series almost did not happen due to an electrician's oh my god. Sorry about that. So it was initially not going to happen, but then actually did happen. So the first episode, The End, is aboard the Juniper Mining ship, as I mentioned. on Red Dwarf. So the lowest ranking crew member, the utter slob Dave Lister, who's played by Craig Charles, is a technician 3rd class, is sentenced to be frozen for 18 months in suspended animation as punishment for breaking quarantine regulations by smuggling his pregnant cat Frankenstein on board, a pet he has obtained while on leave in Titan. He is given the option of having the cat dissected or being frozen in stasis by the Captain Holly, and he chooses to save the cat. There is also a scene where he is with in the engine room, and this happens a bit earlier on, which leads up to him having to go into this big event where he will actually be brought back 3 million years later by the robot who's Holly, who's the ship's computer, so you can ask questions around the place. This is bringing up a few questions about the captain, who's Hollister, who decides that this should happen as the cat. Lister cares more about the cat than the pay he's going to have to forgive for 18 months. But obviously, there's going to be a bit more than his pay that he will be leaving behind. So meanwhile, on Rimmer's side of the story, Rimmer is been preparing for his exam that he will take. Obviously, he's being ridiculed by Lister and his friends and everybody else on board, including Todd Hunter, who is just calling him bad things, and basically what everyone else is doing. So there's always this side of the story, and Arnold Rimmer is his name in full. So as he prepares for his exam, he's getting more and more nervous, studying, but basically just cheating. If you see what happens, he would write on himself in order to get away with it, but Lister looks on. Not really much going on there. Also, another important aspect of this episode is the bunk scenes, which were introduced, and actually are another important aspect of the series to come, and the series is to come, as they are in the same quarters and talk to each other, just basically on trying to better themselves on each other. This brings up quite a enigmatic sort of conflict between the two, which shows two polarizing opposites. Very interesting indeed. So now we get to the moment where Rimmer is going to begin his exam. So he makes his way down to the exam center and faints right away. So Rimmer has fainted under pressure, and this can be brought up about his personality and how he takes everything way too seriously. Even though this is an exam, even though he is cheating, he just can't face the facts of what is happening in front of his eyes. So yes, that is what happens with Rimmer. So now, as we see Lister approaching the stasis room, where he will be taken for 18 months, forfeiting 18 months' wages for the good of his cat, which will be come to later in another important aspect of the episode. And we get to see Rimmer being taken away. So Rimmer is still aboard the ship while Lister is being brought into stasis. This is going to be important. So Lister, who cares very dearly for his cat, is put into the stasis booth, and we find out through way of the show that when he is brought back out, it is 3 million years in the future. And Holly here explains basically that there was a radiation leak on board the ship, and it caused an unfixed radiation leak, which caused in the dry plate, which caused radiation to kill everyone on board the ship, excluding Lister, who's saved by being in the stasis room, which caused him to be out of the time of the normal people. So this meant that when he came out, Holly explaining that it was only safe to bring him out 3 million years later. So he was the only one left on board, and so when he arrives, he sees that everybody is now dust, after the 3 million years wear down their body into dust. So he makes his way down, getting the full realization that as what has happened, that everybody is gone, everyone is dead, the human race is gone because it's 3 million years in the future. They're probably gone on Earth or whatever. Everything has evolved, and he is in deep space as the ship, unable to turn around, having to get away from Earth so that the people on Earth will not be basically exposed to this radiation. Holly, who was in control of the ship at the time, brought them all out into very deep space, 3 million years away from Earth. That's how long it took them to get away, so that there's basically no way of getting back in under 3 years. So in deep space, Lister is back here, and as he goes in to talk to Holly about what the heck has happened to everything on board the ship, we see the reappearance of Rimmer as a hologram himself. And basically, Rimmer was brought back as he was the man that Lister talked to most, and so he was brought back, and this is what happened. So we also see the appearance of Cat, who is a direct descendant of the cat Frankenstein that was sealed in the hold of the ship, making him not immune. He grew whole families and whole species of cats aboard the ship, which we'll figure out later on in future episodes, that basically Cat has evolved from the other cat, but is now humanoid after all the evolution as the only cat left. And when he comes aboard with his style and sophistication of his unique character, played by Danny John Jules, he meets with these guys, and we get used to these three characters being together because it will be a regular appearance in later episodes of Series 1, and for time to come after that. So yeah, we get to see these three characters together for the first time, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, so we get to see these characters together for the first time, and Lister, wanting to get home, agrees with himself, basically, that he will return to Earth triumphant to Fiji. And we get the last lines of the show. Holly, plot a course for Fiji, look at Earth, the slime's coming home. So, there you go. Now, let's get to the overview. And now the overview. So for this episode, The End, there is a lot of good things about this episode. For instance, the introduction is actually quite good, and in terms of pilots, it's one of the better ones actually. If we are going to look at what the main points of this episode are, the main points are, we get a lot of good introductory, just basically knowing the two main characters, Dave and Arnold, and also not getting as much insight into Cat, but still getting a tiny bit of what he's about. In the way he is introduced is actually quite nice. If you go watch the episode, you'll see that he does have some good lines and gets a lot of comedic energy into it, which is great to have, because these three do have a good chemistry. Now with Dave and Arnold, the chemistry is quite different. As we can see in the episode, we know that these two hate each other a lot and do try to one-up on each other, and it's actually really fun to see how they tell their own stories, saying that, oh, I've had such a bad time in my life, and this is my time to, be the hero of the story, or whatever. And obviously, it is quite interesting, because when you never think that these two are going to be, like, basically main characters in any story. They're not very significant in terms of being heroes or anything, but they're just your everyday people. And that is what's so interesting. You can relate to these people. whether you're more like Lister, which a lot of people are, or Rimmer and you're just very stuck up or whatever, you know, or you're lazy or whatever, you can definitely relate to these two people quite well. Another aspect of this story is that we get to see the goings on the ship, which is great. We get to see, we get to see the captain talking to Lister. We get to see his love interest, Kachansky. We get to see other crew members on the ship, which we'll also see later on in the series, or next series. And we'll just see a lot of good stuff going on. Indeed, it's quite interesting at all. And the other main character we also have to mention is Holly, the robot who is the ship's computer. This is very interesting because it is sci-fi, and so robots do make regular appearances. So yeah, it's quite like sort of a cliche, but it is also sort of an ordinary robot who's not like super clever or anything, but likes to show off and be like the other crew on the ship. So it's also interesting to see him in this show. So in all, the series does quite well to impress most of the fans of this show. Writing, pretty well, a lot of good funny moments that you can enjoy and anyone can really enjoy. A lot of physical humour as well with the main characters. And also bringing a slight sci-fi element into the show with, you know, robots, some of the sci-fi elements, the hologram, and also directing was pretty well done. Some good shots of everything, and the exterior shots were alright. I mean, for the time, the 80s, pretty good. Set design a bit grey and all, so that will be fixed up in later series. And as a whole, this episode really nice indeed, and I thought that for a pilot it worked well to introduce us to the main characters and to give us a taste of what is to come in series later on and more episodes.